The Ottawa Senators lose game one of round one of the Stanley Cup playoffs to the Carolina Hurricanes. Not a great result, obviously. 2-0 is it's a bit of a stinker of a score in terms of what you would expect from the Sens. Look, we expect a defensive series, though, at the same time. It's true. So, holding Carolina, very good team, 2 goals, not the end of the world. I've got very mixed feelings about this. Because, look, nobody came into this series expecting the Sens to sweep. Like the Sens were never going to win in 4. The whole plan, if you're the Ottawa Senators, is to wear them down. Just to outlast them, you know? If the Sens win, I think everybody, even the most biased Sens fans, were like, Sens in 6, Sens in 7. Like, if you genuinely thought the Sens were going to win this series in 4 or 5, you know, you got to give your head a spin, you know? Like, that was never going to happen. Game 1, on the road, against the best team in the conference. Like, what do you expect? You know, it's not like... It's not like you're going to win every single game. No team's ever gone 16-0 in the playoffs. So if we were to take bets on what games are they going to lose, I would have said, well, they're probably going to. I'm going to be honest. I went into this game kind of thinking they're probably going to lose game 1. Like, it'd be, if they win, that's great. That's huge. That puts them in a really, really good spot. But I thought the goal for game 1 should be to prove that you can compete with them. Prove to yourselves in game 1 that this series is winnable. That they are not the unstoppable force of nature that a lot of people think the Hurricanes are. And I think in that sense they did succeed. They succeeded. I think that I am more convinced now than I was before this game that the Hurricanes are a beatable opponent. That the Hurricanes are a team that could lose to the Ottawa Senators. Does that make it likely? Whole different story. Look, being up 1 in the series as the favored team, it bodes well for Carolina. But let's look at this game from the perspective of what the Sens did last year, what the Sens did this year, and what Sens fans should be looking for going into this game. Last year, they did not show up. They were not ready to compete. They got blown out in a game that wasn't relatively all that close. And while Game 2 did go to overtime, they didn't exactly play super well in Game 2, now did they? The better team won Game 2, if I'm being honest. They showed up this game. The Sens showed up. They didn't score, and that's an issue, which I'm going to get to. That is a big issue. But they showed up. They actually competed. In the third period, the game was far from over. They went into the third only down 1 goal. Not a great second period. They could have been down by more, but they weren't. Ullmark played well. Ullmark played really well. And ultimately, like, Frederik Andersen helped bail out the Hurricanes a few times. There was one where the Sens thought they scored, and look, after the replay, after the review, it's clear that that wasn't a goal. And it was the right call, no goal. But it goes to show how Frederik Andersen was a big element in the Carolina Hurricanes winning this game. The end of the third period, especially on the power play, the Sens looked really good. They were threatening, and I get that they didn't score, and again, that is an issue. But they looked competitive. They looked like they could win this game. They looked like a team where if you played this game 7 times, they realistically could win 4. I'm not saying that they will. I'm not saying, oh yeah, book it. The team that's down 1-0 definitely winning this series. I'm not cocky. I'm not arrogant. Okay, I'm not blind to the reality that Carolina's a really good team. And they're up 1-0 in the series. And it's going to be tough to beat them. It's going to be really tough to beat them 4 times. But it's not impossible. And it's not impossible for the Sens that, in my opinion, just proven themselves as a team that deserves to be here. And is going to give a fight to whoever they face. Carolina's a tough team. Lesser teams would have got smoked out by them. Real quick. Lesser teams, this game wouldn't have been close. No offense, Red Wings, but this would have been 5-0. This would have been 5-0. Those are the positives, right? The positives are this team can do it. This team could compete. This team's got still a real chance. The negatives, they didn't score. It's the playoffs. You need to score. Your big boys need to be the big boys. And when you have players like Cousins, like Stutzel, like Batherson, when you've got, like Sanderson, when you've got players like that, 0 goals ain't gonna cut it. And when Allmark plays the way he did, played pretty well, like played very, very good. You know, you need him to be decent throughout the playoffs to have any chance. And he can be spotty at times. So when he has a game as good as that one, to not score is really disappointing. Like, my worry now is that the Sens lose the next game like 5-4. And it's like, okay, well, the offense showed up, but we didn't get the goaltending, or the defense wasn't as strong, and so now they're beating us in the chess match. But at the same time, Allmark played well, and since the Olympic break, he's played well, and game 1 of the playoffs, you know, sometimes in the playoffs, goaltenders are different people. He was good. He's the kind of goaltender that you can win with. The way he played last night, he's a goalie that you can win with. And again, it's not even the Stanley Cup that is the main goal this year. Like, yes, obviously that's nice. Obviously, when you get to the playoffs, the goal is the Stanley Cup. That's the dream. That's the hope. But, like, let's say the Sens lose in the conference finals. Would we be like, oh no, foiled again? Oh, blow it up. Trade everyone. No, of course not. We'd say, wow, this team is ready. This team's competitive. This team can do it. This team can go on a deep run. And ironically enough, if Carolina loses in the conference finals again, yeah, they might blow it up. They might be like, oh my goodness, how has this team not won anything yet? Like, I'd argue that, yeah, the stakes are a lot higher for Carolina than they are for us. You know, Carolina, cup or bust. Let's be real. Cup or bust for Carolina this year. Best team in the conference, consistently making the conference finals, lots of deep playoff runs that are getting cut short in 4 or 5 games in the conference finals. Florida's gone. Florida is gone. If there's ever been a year for Carolina to do the thing, this is that year. It's cup or bust for Carolina, and we're trying to be the bust. The team that commits, let's be honest, would be a massive upset in terms of expectation-wise, going into this season and going into the playoffs. Expectations for Carolina, cup or bust. And I think we've proven that against a cup or bust team, we can keep up. So let's keep talking about expectations. Game 2 is really interesting. You know, I talk about how sometimes everybody has that same expectation. Somebody is going to, like, objectively fail. Like, there are some things where, yeah, multiple teams can make the playoffs and all. Like, Sabres, Sens, yeah, you could even Flyers, you could throw in there. You could, and I'd even say Habs. You could argue that at this point, they've had pretty successful seasons. And they're kind of playing with, not completely, but kind of playing with house money. I'd say Buffalo is playing with house money. They could lose in 5. They made the playoffs, for crying out loud. After, 14 years? They're playing with house money. They succeeded. This is going to be remembered as a good season if you're a Sabres fan. I'd argue probably the same for Philly. Montreal, I think you'd want to see, and Ottawa, I think both teams want to see a little bit of improvement from last year, a bit of building blocks. Utah Mammoth, house money. They got Anaheim Ducks, house money. Successful season. You made the playoffs. After not making it for a while, you've made it back. You're back in the dance. This is the foundation that everybody talks about. Successful season. And then there are other teams where success is different. And some teams, in order for them to be successful, it will mean other teams must fail. Game 2, it's like that for me. I think for both teams, it's kind of must win. Ottawa can't go down 2-0 in the series. They can't. You can't do that again. You did it last year. You went 3-0, actually. You went down 3-0. But if you come back to Ottawa down 2-0 again, that is an alarming sign. That is a sign where it's like, okay, can this team actually show up early in a series? Can this team actually keep a series competitive? Or are they going to wait until it's already out of reach before they start getting results? And I don't think that we're there yet. I don't think that... But, one season, okay, it happens first year. Second season, okay, well, Carolina's a good team. Next season, like, if we go down 2-0 this series and lose in round 1, next season, you better win the first 2 games of the playoffs. Like, the expectation changes to, you'd better friggin' show up. You'd better friggin' get results. And if you don't, we aren't going to be happy. Again, we talk about how we have good players who didn't score. We got shut out. And, it makes me think of all those star players where you hear the narrative of they're really good, but then they disappear in the playoffs. They're really good, and then they disappear in the playoffs. And we aren't yet at a point where there are narratives about Ottawa in the playoffs. It's still kind of fresh. But if you lose game 2, again, people get on narrative watch. Their ears perk up. Next season, if you make it back to the playoffs, everybody says, I wonder how those first 2 games are going to go for Ottawa. Especially if they're the away team. I wonder how those first 2... And then narratives get spun. But you can preemptively nix it in the bud. Say, nope, Ottawa won game 2. Ottawa kept it competitive. Ottawa stole home ice advantage. They made it a best of 5, and in those 5 remaining games, 3 are being played in Ottawa. And conversely, Carolina is Carolina. The expected team to get out of the East, and for a lot of people, for people like myself, the team that I like, separated from a Sens fan. If I have to pick a non-Sens team that's going to win the Cup, I've been saying for years that Carolina is due. Carolina's been due. I thought Carolina was going to win the Cup like 3 years ago. I've just been like, they're a good team. They're bound to go on a deep run. They're bound to win a Cup soon. And I'm worried that I hope it's not this year. They face Sens in round 1. But I would not be shocked if Carolina wins the Cup. If Carolina goes to Ottawa, series tied, you're supposed to be Cup contenders. Not losing to a wild card 2 team. Oh my goodness, yeah, that would be, like, I think more so for Carolina, alarm bells would be raising. It would be, oh my goodness. How many times are you not going to finish the job? If the Sens win the series, like, we might see seismic shifts in Carolina. This is a team that should honestly have 2 cups by now. Like in the past 10 years. They should have 2 by now. They are so good. They have so much depth. They are such an impossibly good... And then they get to the conference finals and they lose in 4. They lose in 5. And you're like, what? How do you keep doing this? To lose in round 1 to a wild card team would be 5 bell alarm. The whole system's burning down. So I think for both teams, game 2 is kind of must win. Now, I am going to reel it back to the Sens a little bit. I think as long as game 4, the series is tied, the Sens are okay. They're in a good spot. But if they lose game 2, game 3 is must win, game 4 is must win. You cannot go into game 5 at risk of being eliminated. Unlike some teams, Carolina does not play with their food. If you give them a chance to eliminate you and they're the home team, if you give Carolina a chance to close out the series at home, they close out the series at home. The only time I would say, yeah, you know what, if you give Carolina a chance to close out the series at home, is if you also have a chance to close out that series. Game 7. Right? If you go into Game 5 and you lose, but the series is now 3-2 for Carolina, you're still in a good spot. As long as you win at home, winner take all. Winner take all. But the Sens are now in a tough spot. And they need to score. You do not want that narrative of they disappear in the playoffs. And we got good players, one game. And I trust this team more so than I have in past seasons. I trust this team to have a bad game where the goal scorers aren't goal scoring and then to just bounce back the next one. And to play well and to get goals. But that bounce back needs to happen. My mood for this series is basically entirely dependent on Game 2 and to a lesser extent Game 3. I will say if they win Game 2, they can drop Game 3 as long as they win Game 4. If they win Game 2 and 3, then I'd say that they're in like a perfect spot. But if they win Game 2 and they can steal home ice advantage, they're in a fine position. And like I've said before, if they don't win, I want the series to be competitive. And like, yes, last year it was competitive, but by competitive, what I mean this time is that Carolina is sweating the whole time. Not, after Game 5, there was a little bit of tension. There was no tension after Game 3, right? Last year, it's 3-0. The Sens are done. Game 4, okay, the Sens won 1 in overtime. Game 5, okay, it's getting a little tense, and Game 6 was close. But I want a little bit more. I want by Game 3, the series is already close. I want by the end of Game 3, there's already a lot of tension that the Sens could win this thing. Not, the Sens are probably going to lose, but hey, let's see how the next game or two goes. You got to stay in it. You've proven that you can. You've proven that they are beatable. But you need a little bit more finish. And I think that they're capable of it. Like I said, I've got mixed feelings. My mood for this series is entirely dependent on what they do tonight. I'm going to go a step further. I'm not just going to say good game. I think they need to win. You had your good game. This is me saying, you know what, they lost, but it was a good game, good job. Round of applause. You got that one. Now it's time to win. You had a good game where you just didn't get the result you wanted. Sure, you got outplayed and outshot, but you kept it close. Now it's time to deliver. Now it's time to pay the piper. We made the playoffs, right? We made the playoffs for a reason. To do something. Let's do something. Lots of series left. Much better showing in Game 1 than last year. But still, we need results. And as always, go, Ottawa. Go.